The 2024 season for Oneil Cruz was one of twists and turns. But what does the outlook look like moving forward as far as his ceiling? We'll discuss on today's episode of Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates. My name is Ethan Smith. I've been hosting this show for 4 years and counting here on the Locked On Podcast Network, bringing you your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything about the Pittsburgh Pirates, even when they haven't played a baseball game in nearly a month. I still do it. Today's episode, by the way, folks, brought to you by FanDuel. The sports equinox is today. You could literally bet on any major United States sport today if you wanted to on FanDuel right now. So go to FanDuel.com. Tell them that Locked On Pirates sent you. Doesn't really do me much, but just do it anyway. And joining me today, a new guest, of course. You probably saw that I tweeted about it on Friday. This head up here decided it wanted to be like pounding when Josh was supposed to be on the show. But we rescheduled it to Monday. And if you see on YouTube when this drops, Josh is kind of decked out in the Steelers gear right now because he'll be going to the Steeler game right after this. So I expect Josh, Mr. Josh Poe, the real Han YOLO, by the way, to bring the energy. Josh, how you doing on this wonderful Monday afternoon where the weather's getting colder, but the Pirates talk, well, I was going to say it gets hotter, but it's not.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to do this. I love the Pirates. I'm excited to talk about the Pirates. I love the Pirates more than I like the Steelers, so I'm more than happy to talk about them.
It is a cruel existence to like the Pirates more than the Steelers, and I can join you in this existence of making baseball my favorite sport because it's the sport that I played. I never once I did put on a football helmet, but it just never got to me.
I wasn't allowed to play, so.
Oh well, there you go. But we're going to discuss a player that is usually on the minds of Pirates fans quite a bit. It's Oneil Cruz. This is kind of a part of the player review series that I was doing, but I kind of want to scrap that idea now and just talk about who people want to hear about, if that makes any sense, or just talk about it broadly rather than naming it something. And with Oneil Cruz this year, as you heard in the intro, folks, I mean, 2024, before we say anything else, full season from Oneil Cruz for the most part. Really no major injuries to speak of. No injuries that you really had to worry about on the front of Oneil Cruz, which was very nice to see because I feel like we would have been having this conversation, Josh, last year, but he obviously was out for pretty much the entire campaign. So now we finally get that full season from Oneil Cruz after the 2022 season where he came up and did okay. We saw a little glimpse of him in 2023, and when that was when we were expecting that ceiling to go up. Just on the broad side of things, 541 at-bats, 259 average, 773 OPS, 2020 guy. So when you're bringing up his ceiling, Josh, what do you think is the ceiling that we could see from Oneil Cruz if everything starts clicking? If the bat is crazy, the defense ends up being at least average, what is the ceiling that Oneil Cruz can possess with the talent that he has?
MVP, 100%. 100%. There's no doubt in my mind. He would be an MVP. If he can put it together, he's 100% an MVP. There's nothing to me about him when I watch him play, when he's like on. And there were stretches this season that you saw it when he would you would come up and he just demolished the ball, right? Mm-hmm. The thing about him, I feel like I think that gets lost with a lot of fans is he's young. Mm-hmm. I mean, for a baseball career, he's young because he's only been, like you said, first full year.
Yep.
And the thing about him is, I think in the long run, if the Pirates can build out a lineup around him, he's an MVP, 100%.
Yeah, and that's kind of an agreement here. I will not go as crazy to say that he could be an MVP, seeing as he is in the same league as the Shohei Ohtanis of the world and the Mookie Bettses of the world. So I think it's okay when you're bringing up the ceiling of Oneil Cruz to say, yeah, this is a guy that could literally be a 40-40 player if everything went right. 30-30 even, which to me is not out of the realm of possibility going into next season. That is all-star level numbers. I do think going into next year, you could see Oneil Cruz flirt at the bare minimum, flirt with being an all-star. Now, I do think that's a little bit easier now with the move to center field, just based off of who he's going against at that position versus who he was going against at shortstop in the National League. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. But the thing that I liked about Oneil Cruz so much this season, he had his struggles. We're not going to act like Oneil Cruz was just on the entire year. That's not what me and Josh are here to do at all. But when you look at what he was able to do over the course of the season, it's a word that I've said with Oneil Cruz ever since I laid eyes on the kid and ever since I saw the potential that he has. He adjusted. You started to finally see him become a weapon of sorts against left-handed pitching, whereas previously, even in this 2024 campaign, he was just practically useless against left-handed pitching, and opposing managers knew that. They would put a lefty in against him. You don't want to pull him out of the game, so you pretty much just had to keep him there. He was a non-factor against lefties. But then you start going and looking at his splits this year that you see from Oneil Cruz as I pull him up here and keep making my point. He wasn't like exceptional, Josh, against left-handed pitching, but you'll take a 686 OPS against the left-handed pitchers for Oneil Cruz. He brought the average up to 224, which again, if you look at where he was versus where he is now against left-handed pitching, I think sometimes these managers on the other side of the diamond think, oh, I just can't put in a lefty here and expect it to be a free out anymore.
No, and that's the thing. Like you said, at the end of the season, he was doing good against lefties. I remember I saw a tweet about it. Like they like the managers challenged him or whatever to do better. But it's like one of those things where it's like at the end of the season, right? Like they bring in lefties, and you didn't start fearing that, before in the start of the season he put a lefty and you're like, oh my god, 3-pitch at bat coming, and now it's like he would fight. He fought in these at bats and he would do well.
Yeah.
I think he's like right there. I think he's right there. I think he's a good piece,
Yeah, and you think he's getting there. And another fun thing that I wanted to bring up before we move on here, when I was looking at Oneil Cruz's statistics and his splits and everything before we started, I did find it fun that, you know how a lot of players in this league, especially in baseball, we just saw Freddie Freeman do it in the World Series, they get defined by those clutch moments. And I was wondering about where Oneil Cruz was as far as inning by inning splits. Oddly enough, he is absolutely horrible in the first 4 innings of baseball games. But then 5th inning, he hits 281, 6th inning, 281, 7th inning, 290, 8th inning, 245, 9th inning, 333. So you're not only looking at a guy that can impact the game in so many different ways by getting on the base pass to hitting pretty much any home run he wants when he really gets a hold of one, to now shifting to a new defensive position. You start to wonder, okay, how does this all come together? And with him moving to center field, what impact does it have on him, Josh, and what impact does it have on the team? We'll discuss in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5, because you can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can get in on all the action that sports has to offer in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. And if you sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5, guess what? You don't even need to win to receive that bonus. It's a guarantee for you. You're looking at the Steelers game tonight, the Steelers game that Josh will be at. If you think that George Pickens is going to go over on his yards or Russell Wilson will throw more than 1.5 passing touchdowns, you can go on Prize Picks right now and bet that with $5 and get $50 back if you win or lose. It's free money. So make sure you go to Prize Picks, download the app today, and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today. Use that code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. And don't forget, folks, that the World Series is in full swing. So make sure you head over to Locked On MLB on the bottom right of your corner if you're on YouTube to listen to Paul Francis Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, talk about everything that's going on in the World Series and what a World Series it has been so far. So I kind of loathe Sully because I wish I could talk about it more on this show, but I don't want to bore Pirates fans with talking about the Yankees and the Dodgers. I'd rather talk about players on my team, Josh. Rather talk about Oneil Cruz. And I will say, and I still have this show obviously up because all these shows stay up no matter what. After the Oneil Cruz decision was made to move him from shortstop to center field, I was indifferent. I didn't really know how I felt about it at the time. I felt that it was very sudden. Like it almost felt like it just kind of happened to happen, especially after comments that we saw from Ben Cherington saying that the week before he was their future shortstop. That was the guy that they wanted to play shortstop for the foreseeable future. They move him away and move him into the outfield, and constantly, Josh, all the time, when I'm talking to people at the bar, talking to people in the comments section, talking to people on Twitter, all I heard was move Oneil Cruz to the outfield. He'll be better there. I did not expect it to be center. We'll just start with that. I thought it would be one of the corner outfield spots. He looked okay to me. But what were your thoughts on what you saw from Oneil Cruz defensively in center field in the small little bracket of time that we got to see it? And how do you think he's going to go going into next year?
Yeah, my reaction, same as you. When I saw that tweet from No Hiles, I think, I remember just being like, this is so weird. This is so weird. I don't know. And, rush of emotions, like I didn't like it. Because, during the season, right, you see people tweet about be like, oh, moving to right, moving to left. And I was like, it's not going to be better. I didn't think it was going to be better. Like he's going to be shanking balls in right field or left field. And we're going to have, another Greg. I hate to say that. I hate to say another Gregory Polanco in our hands, but watching him firsthand for so many years, watch like a ball in right field and him just completely lay it, right? I was like, I don't want that again. Because I was like, O'Neill's pretty good at shortstop. He's got the arm and he's got the range. And you can't teach that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And same thing with that center field. He has a great arm in center field. He has great range. I think seeing a little bit out there, I liked it. I think it's good. The thing that I think the Pirates are going to have to build off of is solidifying those other corners around him, making sure that he's not the center of attention where he has to be better than the other corners. Where he has to make up for, as much as I like Brian Reynolds, he's not the best in left field, right? And Brian De La Cruz and right bobbling every ball he has. So like that's my thing is like this is a smart move if the Pirates can make it a smart move.
Yeah, and it kind of goes into my next point is, you have questions at those corner outfield spots. You have the possibility of even moving Brian Reynolds to first base and then making another question mark at that corner outfield spot. But with Oneil Cruz specifically, I think a lot of people have kind of forgotten that shortstop now kind of becomes a need. I know that a lot of people will say Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. Of all the defensive positions that IKF has played in his career, I will tell you shortstop is the one you don't want him to play if you have the choice. Now, you obviously have Key Brian Hayes at third base and hope that he can find a way to be healthy. If he can't, you move forward very interestingly with how you decide to move forward with that. But in hindsight, I still think it's easier if you moved Oneil Cruz to center field and it does work. Let's say it does work. I think it will. I would say my confidence is about 65-35 on it will versus it won't. I think it's easier to go out and find a shortstop via trade or free agency than it is to find a bona fide center fielder that could be the best player on your team. Well, Paul Skeens, obviously, but best position player on this team. I mean, that is the kind of ceiling that Oneil Cruz has. He can be, and you can even make an argument now that he is the best player on this team as far as like position players go. But now do you really want to open up that shortstop position
I
to
don't know.
really have to go find it? I think that's really where I'm at with this. You look at free agency, and I haven't really looked yet, but I don't know what's there.
It's not good.
Trade wise, whole nother show, but at some point, this plethora of pitching that you have, you're going to have to use it to fill a need. You could see that this offseason where they go out and they trade one of these young pitchers for a shortstop. If they do that, that's fine. But color me worried And well, folks, because the power of editing is not my strong suit, hopefully now that you've read the description, you skip between the timestamps that you needed to. So this show will be a little bit longer in length, but in reality, there's like 4 minutes of dead time because my pause button doesn't work and my internet apparently doesn't either. But as I was saying, and apparently that might be an omen about the shortstop market. Yeah, I mean, moving Oneil Cruz to shortstop is interesting. It just is because it allows you now to allow your best young player, arguably in the infield, in the field period, to kind of hone his craft at that position. But now you've opened up a potential hole at arguably the most important position in baseball at shortstop.
Yeah, and that's my thing about it, where I'm like, I don't know, I don't see who they would put in there on the
Mhm.
roster currently. I don't think Gonzalez has the kind of range to do it. Maybe Peggy if he can put together a good at bat, but they don't seem to want to give him the chance or the run.
Mhm.
I mean, and then who else you got? I mean, IKF, and that's the thing about IKF. I think he works better when you can use him as like the super util, right? The Ben
Mhm.
Zobrist type of player where you can put him anywhere you need him at that current moment. I don't think putting him at shortstop works. I really just don't.
Yeah, and I can agree there as well. And for the sake of this show being the length that it needs to be, we'll move on from that topic. But I do think that we're both in agreement that Oneil Cruz is going to hopefully work out in center field. But Josh, I'm going to ask you a big what if question when we come back. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make sure you go to FanDuel.com right now because you can get ready to tackle the NFL action on FanDuel with America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and an official sponsor, the Locked On Podcast Network. And welcome back, everybody, to the final part of today's episode of Locked On Pirates, which featured a new guest Monday, October 28th on a Sports Equinox, and a 4-minute dead period of time that decided because my internet decided it wanted to not work for that allotted amount of time. So, yeah, and I guess I was talking about shortstops, so that was the whole thing there. But before we started, I told Josh that I was going to ask him a big what if question as it pertains to Oneil Cruz and Pittsburgh Pirates themselves. So I'm going to ask this in two different ways. So it's two questions, but it's just literally one word different. What if Oneil Cruz does take that next step about his game, where we were discussing it a little bit earlier, saying that he could be a 30-30 guy. You're saying he could potentially be an MVP candidate. I'm saying he could potentially be an all-star. What if Oneil Cruz does do that in 2025?
I think the Pirates will make the playoffs. 1,000%. The thing about the Pirates that I keep coming back to whenever I talk about them, because a lot of my friends will be like, "What? Why are you still rooting for them, man? They're so bad." And I'm like, the thing about them is if you stack their rotation up, their 1, 2, 3 against all the 1, 2, 3s you saw in the playoffs currently, I think they could beat most of those teams.
Mm-hmm.
It's just getting this lineup corrected. And the thing about the lineup is, I think Brian Reynolds is Brian Reynolds. He's going to do his thing. He's going to do his, he's going to come, work, get his thing done, right? That's what he does. That's what he's done every year. But you need somebody to be that guy, right? You need someone to be that guy in that lineup where you're like, he is our guy. Unfortunately, I don't think I've ever seen it from Brian Reynolds. Not saying he's not good, he's an all-star, but I don't see that, like, when Kutch was on, those 2013 teams, Kutch was that guy where you're
Mm.
like, he runs this team, and I'm happy when he comes up to bat. And then you have the other players that are really good, all-star level caliber players, right? Whereas I think if Oneil Cruz takes that step, he is that guy. He's the face of this team. I think they make the playoffs 1,000%.
So you're saying that on the team standpoint, what
Mhm.
does that look like for him? What kind of
All-star.
statistics do we think we see from Oneil Cruz? You definitely say all-star, but what kind of statistics are we thinking here that would define it as taking the next step?
30 home runs, 100 ribbies. I'd like to see him steal 30 bags. I know he can do it.
Mhm.
He has the speed. That's another thing I'd like to see the Pirates improve on as a whole, but I think it starts with him as well. Let him run. He can do
Okay.
it. If Ohtani can steal 50 bags, I think Cruz can do 30.
Fair enough. Now, on the flip side, probably
Mhm.
the more dim part, some people might say the more realistic part. What if Oneil Cruz doesn't take that next step? We get around the same deal, right? We get around the same player that we saw this season, that 259 average, 773 OPS, 20 homers, 22 stolen bases. What do we think? I better not a lot. We may have lost Josh here on this part, but I'll take over before he comes back, hopefully. Um, I don't know how much really changes here as far as that goes, and it looks like we did lose Josh here. The power of editing. Um, but with Oneil Cruz, folks, I mean, truthfully, if we get this same version of Oneil Cruz next year, I think you're okay with it. I just think you also have to wonder what kind of team this looks like, right? I think you have to wonder, what does the team around him look like? Like Josh made a great point. What does the team around him look like? What kind of team are we talking about? What kind of team are we seeing around a guy like Oneil Cruz if he's going to be that player? Now, if he's just going to be that player, that's fine. You have Reynolds, you have Cruz, you have other contributors potentially. If Oneil Cruz is going to be that player, that is perfectly fine. But I do think that you want to see him elevate, like how I asked Josh about that what if. I do think you want to see Oneil Cruz elevate himself into that 30-30 club, or even 25 homers and 40 stolen bases, or see the RBIs go into the 90s or the OPS go into the 800s. But this season specifically was more about Oneil Cruz getting back into the swing of things, finding himself, finding a groove again, playing his first full campaign. And I think that's what we can look forward to next year, is now Oneil Cruz could say that he has that under his belt. He finally has that season under his belt that he can look back on and say, okay, I played a full season. I played well, albeit defensively, a lot left to be desired. But now we go into 2025, and it's hard to ignore how good of a player Oneil Cruz is. It's hard to ignore how much better Oneil Cruz could potentially be. And folks, we're going to get to watch all of it next season. And we will obviously talk about Oneil Cruz a lot through the offseason. Sorry for some of the audio issues. Sorry for some of the video issues, but glad to be back. I'm starting to feel a little bit better. So thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates. Josh, who's no longer here, make sure you go follow him at The Real Han Yolo. He just joined the Steel City Pirates team. So make sure you go and find that. Folks, have a wonderful rest of your Monday evening. Watch the Steeler game tonight. Make sure you go check out Chris Carter over at Locked On Steelers. And until next time, we'll see you on the flip side.